Hi, I'm Mindie Burgoyne, and I'm going to talk to you today about the best road maps for Ireland, or at least the best ones in my opinion. We run tours to Ireland every year, and we also help people coordinate individual travel. And I've been traveling many, many years to Ireland and have driven thousands of miles and across all 32 counties. And I do think it's important to have a road map, but I don't think it's important to have a road map for the reason most people think it's important. I don't think you should drive around looking at a road map. You should get, when you rent a car, get the sat nav or satellite navigator. We would call it a GPS. That is, it takes 50% of the tension away from the driving experience in Ireland. I mean, understand how the Irish approach navigating roads when they drive. It's a very different culture than we're used to in America. We have big roads with big signs, and we're a big country. Ireland's only about the size of Maryland or New Hampshire or West Virginia. And while they do have very good motorways, very good roads now that go across the country in north-south, when you get off of those major roadways, they tend to look at directions village by village, where we look at roads. We would, if we were to give somebody directions, we would say, take I-95 to exit 27, get off there, make a left, go up to 3 traffic lights and turn right on ABC Road or route such and such. And though the roads in Ireland have names and they have route numbers, they aren't always posted. You can't always tell what they are. But if an Irish person gives you directions, it's going to be, take the Dublin Road up to Kildare and go left at the roundabout. And you might get to the roundabout and there's a left at 10 o'clock and there's a left at 8 o'clock, and it's total confusion. It's very difficult for us. And if you are at the mercy of a printed map and having somebody navigate or try to look, it's just stressful and you will get lost. So what they have now that's great is it's something like 10 euros a day. When you rent the car, get what they call the sat nav. It's a mountable GPS navigation device, and you put in the address and it takes you right there. It's easy to get through the city centers as well as just follow the roads. That is the best option for getting around in Ireland. I 100% recommend that you get that with your rental car. But you do need a map. And why do you need a map? For 2 reasons. One is to help plan your trip. It's good to see the whole country, in map form, and then identify the sites you really want to go to. Maybe you want to go to Kinsale, and you also want to go to the Rock of Cashel, and you'd like to see Dingle. Then you can see right where those places are in the south of Ireland and chart them and fill in other places that you might want to go. The second reason you want a map is when you're in Ireland, you want something that gives you a regional perspective of where you are right now. This is something that our guests, we do group tours and we also coordinate individual travel. And even on the group tours, when we're leading the whole group around everywhere all together, we had guests say, we wish we had a map so that each day we could see where we are and how we've progressed. And so we've changed that. Starting this year, all of our tours, we will be giving the guests a map. But that's so important. You can also use the map to remember that very same map. When you come back, you can even have made notes on it, and you can see where you went. So if you plan another trip, you kind of have an idea. Believe it or not, it's easy to forget exactly where you were, especially if you're not that familiar with the country. So what do you look for in a map? One of the things that I look for is it's coded and not paper. A map like this map, which is one is very well used for me. This was one put out by the OSI. It's paper, and I made notations on it, all over it. Everywhere I went, I highlighted and made notes on. You can see a little bit of the highlighting marks there, these little blue spots. But it's paper. It rains in Ireland. It gets wet, even if it's just little droplets. And when you start looking at it after a while, the paper tears and you can't really read it where the folds are. The paper maps don't have that much of a difference from the coded maps in price. So look for a coded map. You want to have points of interest. You might want to have an expanded view of the city centers like Galway, Cork, Dublin, Waterford, Belfast, Derry. That makes it easy if you're inside those towns to kind of get a better perspective. A scale of miles is good. Everybody but us uses kilometers, but I still after all these years, just can't do kilometers in my head, but miles I get. So maybe a scale of miles. Some of the maps will also have driving distances. They'll have a little graph, and it'll say, from Cavan to, Dingle. You find Cavan, you find Dingle, you meet where the graphs join in. It'll say that's how many miles it is, or how many kilometers, or you can approximate how long it'll take you to drive there. Those are helpful as well. But really, when planning your trip, the most important things are that you can accurately read the counties, and if there are points of interest, accurately read them, because you'll use your sat nav for the driving. So I have 3 that I really like and that I recommend, and then I have a couple of other ones I really like. So I'm going to tell you about my top 3 choices. One would be the Michelin. Michelin they're just great maps. Their Germans are very detail oriented. So when you open up this map, you have a lot of roads. All of the things like the driving distances, the scale of miles, all of the road signs. They have a really detailed index. So it's not just place names like, where's this town or that village, but where are the Sparran Mountains, or where is this river? Those things are also indexed. The big drawback to the Michelin map is its paper. I just bought this one. This is brand new. Bought it in Barnes & Noble. It was about $11. So it's an expensive map, and it is a paper map, but it is very detailed, both with roads and some points of interest. Not a lot of points of interest, but some. So it's pretty dependable road map. The other favorite, the one that I used for years and years, are the Ordnance Survey maps, or the OSI maps, or the maps that are put out by the mapping agency for Ireland, the National Mapping Agency. And they have many versions of these. These are old. This was the culture map, and then I had the tour map. They have one now that's very popular of the west of Ireland, because, in the west of Ireland, there are so many little sites, little tiny hidden sites. Most people, have heard about the Dingle Peninsula, the Ring of Kerry, the Cliffs of Moher, the Burren, but there are so many tiny little places of interest. And when I say tiny, I mean they are not often traveled. And that's because people know what the big sites are. But if you've got a car and you're doing self-driving, why not see some of those other sites? And the Ordnance Survey maps, depending on which one you get, will have those sites identified. They also have the same thing as a scale of miles, the distance traveled, the indexes, but they're also paper. So I'm not a big fan of that. But I am a big fan of the culture map and the tour map, because they identify every visitor center, almost every castle ruin, the main cultural sites or heritage sites are right identified, and you can easily pick them out. So again, that's the Ordnance Survey, or the OSI maps. You can buy them on Amazon. You can also buy them right from their website, and they're in most of the visitor center type stores in Ireland. So you can also find them there. Now, just below this video, I have links to all these maps. You can go right to Amazon and order whichever one you want based on the links I have. This is my favorite. This is the one that we buy for our guests this year. All of our guests are going to get the Collins Road Map. Now, Collins makes a lot of different kinds of maps too. They have a touring map. They have a road map that looks just like this, but it also has the speed cameras. That's a big thing in Ireland now, where they don't have a lot of law enforcement out tracking you speeding, but they do have these speed cameras. And the map shows you where the speed cameras are, the other one. I don't speed, so I don't need that map. But I'll tell you why I love this one. It doesn't have the points of interest on it, not really. It has very few points of interest. So, that's kind of a drawback. But what it does have is it's coded, and it has all of the same blow up of the cities, the larger guide of the city centers, and the driving distance. This is what the driving distance graphs look like. So if you can kind of see that, you can see where this would be a city up, where am I here? There'd be a city across here. Well, actually, here are the cities. And if you wanted to get from one city, this city, to this city, you would just... This is terribly hard to do backwards. So if you wanted to get from Cavan here to Dingle here, you would just go up the graph and where the two meet, this would be the driving miles and the hours. It's very handy if you want to guess how long it's going to take you to drive. But this is why I love this map, is because Ireland is very county centric. It was a country of clans, and many of the descendants of those clans still live in those places. And if they don't, they're still attached to their ancestral home, just as we in America have oftentimes got an attachment for our old clan that may have gone back, 17 generations to Ireland, or 15 generations, 10 generations. Well, every county has its flag and its sports team and a certain enthusiasm. And I noticed that guests, when we're in Ireland, will say, what counties did we go in? What county are we in now? So the counties are kind of a way to identify sort of waypoints. I've been to this county, kind of like being in the 50 United States, the 32 counties of Ireland. And this map has a beautiful display of the counties. So if you look at how they're all color-coded, so it's very easy to differentiate county from county. If you look up here, you can see, I know on this side, when you look at the north, it's amazing to see how big Donegal is. County Donegal is right up there on the top in the pink. That's a huge county. When you just have a little border line written on a map, you can't grasp the location of each county. And you can with this map. So if you decide where you want to go, the points that you absolutely have to see, let's say you wanted to see Slieve League and you wanted to see Drumcliff and you also wanted to see Cage Fields and Mayo, you could mark them on this map. And then fill in other points as you research sites. So while the points of interest aren't exactly on the map, you can mark them in. And then take this map with you so that while you're in Ireland, you can see where you're going and where you've been, and do it very easily with the counties delineated. And the map is only about $7 or $8. So it's a real good map to have. So those would be my 3 generic map recommendations. This is like my favorite map. So I take this one and I take this one. This is the National Geographic Adventure Map, and it doesn't have any of the road stuff. So, no driving time, scale of miles, none of that. It's really about locating geographically sites. So it has way more sites than even the OSI maps. So these maps, I said, Ireland has put them out and identified their heritage sites. This has the heritage sites, it has the castles, it has the monastic ruins, it has, little dolmens that are often fields will be marked on there, as well as the big megalithic sites like, Drombegstone Circle or Grangestone Circle. These have the little tiny ones. They also note every mountain and mountain ranges. So if you're driving it, and this happens to me a lot, I'm trying to take in my surroundings and I think, well, what mountain is that? Is there any story about that mountain? Because the Irish have stories for everything. And that's part of the draw and the mystical quality of the country. Well, they're all on here. They have surfing beaches, camping places, caravan camping as well as tent camping, notable forests that are in Ireland. So I love this. This is what I use to plan my trips. When we're doing tours and looking at sites, for example, we might say, wow, I'm going to go to County Wicklow and I'm headed to Wexford. What's on the way? I don't have anything really to see between Wicklow and my Tintern Abbey in Wexford. Well, that's, what I was looking at. This is where I found some really interesting megalithic sites that were in between those spots. So this is a really cool map to have. $15, I think. Maybe it might not even be that much. It might be 11 or 12. Yeah, it's $13. And it is coded, very sturdy, with a huge index, too, of place names and sites, are in the index. So if I were planning a trip to Ireland, I would buy 2 maps. I'd get these 2 right here. If you're self-planning your own tour, the Nat Geo Adventure Map and the Collins Road Map, let's put them in there. These would be the ones I'd get together. There's a couple others worth mentioning. This one is a very cool little map for Dublin. So Dublin reminds me kind of a lot of Washington, D.C., where I'm from. You know, people travel to Washington all the time, and they might only have a day or two, and so they always see the same thing. You know, they'll see the Washington Monument, maybe the reflecting pool, and the Lincoln Memorial, walk past the White House and do the Smithsonian. And all of those are like right in one general area. Those are the big sites. Yet I know, being a native, that there are just scores of things to see in Washington, D.C. that are so awesome that nobody knows about. And the same thing is true of Dublin. You know, people go to Dublin, they want to see Trinity College, they want to see Christ Church Cathedral, St. Stephen's Green, the Guinness Storehouse, maybe go down to Temple Bar and the pubs. And those sites are all located in kind of the general area just south of the River Liffey in Dublin. But this map gives you not only a map of streets so you know where you're going, because in Dublin that can be confusing. You almost have to, you know, in order to go down the right street and find your places. But this is more of an infographic than a you know, a normal map. But you can see the map of Ireland really has almost nothing on it except major roadways. So it's just, that's all it's got. Highways and then townships. But it does have little bits of information along the side that tell you about the regions, and that's helpful. But on the other side is a big infographic. So there's the Temple Bar section there, but then on this section below it are the River Liffey's right in the center, and all of those sites that I just mentioned, plus many others, are listed on there with, I might even be able to get a little bit of a closer look. Some of the fine print even shows shops and places to go like that. The museums are on there. But if you're going to be in Dublin for a few days, this is a very good little map to have to just walk around and see interesting sites. That if you go to the museum, for example, you might find on this map that there's a very cool coffee place right next to the museum, which there is. So I recommend that if you're going to be in Dublin for a few days. And then I have to say something about Rick Steves' map, because I was looking at some of the best-selling tour maps of Ireland. And I have a love-hate relationship with Rick Steves, and someday I'll meet him. But for now, the thing about Rick is I think his guidebook is probably the #1 guidebook on Ireland. And his guidebooks are awesome. You feel like you have him, a tour guide, right with you. He's a historian, so I can't say enough good things about Rick when it comes to writing about places in Ireland. But I can say that he doesn't write about all the places. In fact, he writes about very few places. So he really loves Derry. He really loves Dingle, and he writes extensively about these places. But you almost never find anything about the Midlands or the Beara Peninsula or some other places that it's just not a comprehensive view. And this map is not a road map, and he doesn't claim that it is. It's a planning map, and it does really follow his guidebook, which does not mention the places that I just mentioned. So when you look at this map, I think it's kind of misleading because it's not cheap either. It is coded. It's a very high quality. But look at the Republic of Ireland. Take a look at the center. There's nothing on there. There's no roads. There's no points of interest. Now, if you get over here to Dingle, is that where Dingle is, or is that on this side? I guess Galway, that region, you'll find a whole lot. You'll find lots of little places, that he's written about. So he's written about them, and then he does articulate them quite well in the map. And that's great if those are the only places you're going to. But if you want to go anywhere, in Donegal, there's nothing here. There's nothing on the map except 2 sites, Glenview National Park and a workhouse. Sleeve League is also noted. The Inishowen Peninsula has nothing except Malin even written on it. So and on the back are all the enlargements of the cities. Now, the cities that are on here are the largest cities: Dublin, Greater Dublin, Galway, Belfast, Derry, Dingle. Actually, Galway is there. Cork isn't on here. It's the second largest city in Ireland, and it's certainly a great destination. So if you were, this would not be the map I would choose. If you're a Rick Steves, if you're on the Rick Steves train and you just love what he does and you follow his guidebook and that's the path you're going to take when you go to Ireland, this would be a great map to have. Otherwise, I would not get it because it's really not a good map for that. I'm going to have just a word about these atlases. I used to carry, this is the Collins Complete Road Atlas of all the roads in Ireland. And you can open up to a certain point and all the roads in that area will be identified. This is really obsolete. You should use the satellite navigation. It's a much better, it's always current, and it's a much easier way to navigate the roads. So that's my thought. I'm going to just sum it up to say, if you only got one, I'd get this one. If you can afford to get two, then get the Nat Geo Adventure Map. And work the two of them for planning your trip. And then honorable mentions go to the Map Easy guide map to Ireland and Spirits. And by the way, that's not Ghost, that's whiskey. That would be my recommendation. And all of the maps that I mentioned are listed right under this video with the links to Amazon, so you can have at it and enjoy planning your trip. Thanks for listening.